We'll be back here again if we don't deal with it.
I've got a feeling if the cops in Staten Island wore cameras, and Bill Bratton said they're moving in that direction, let's hope they do, that wouldn't have happened. The tragedy in Staten Island wouldn't have happened. So we've been talking about how the situation in Ferguson has really been focused on the militarization of local police. And it's brought together unlikely allies. Groups as diverse as the ACLU and Cato have actually warned about heavily armed police departments. Senator Elizabeth Warren compared the scene to a war zone. Senator Rand Paul wrote in Time magazine that we must demilitarize the police. The same thing Claire McCaskill said in a great press conference yesterday. If I had been told to get out of the street as a teenager, there would have been a distinct possibility I might have smarted off. But I wouldn't have expected to be shot. And Missouri Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill, as we said before, went to Ferguson, and she urged restraint.
My goal over the last 24 hours has been to demilitarize the response. After 9/11, in sometimes a knee-jerk fashion, we began equipping police departments with all kinds of tools that had not been typical of policing in this country. And maybe it's time to look at all of that and make a determination as to how effective is a show of what is military force.
Jeremy Peters, I thought Rand Paul's op-ed yesterday was an important one. Of course, I do as a Republican, because it was actually a Republican who seemed to show a little bit of empathy for this community and say some things that Republicans on the national level unfortunately didn't say during the Trayvon Martin case. But now Rand Paul is saying. But the militarization of the local police across America, you've reported, is causing some real concerns on both sides.
I think what you're seeing here is a grappling inside the Republican Party with how to deal with this emerging strain of libertarianism. Remember, this is the party, the law and order party that Richard Nixon ran in 1968 as being tough on crime, running against Democrats who were soft on crime. And that has pretty much been the Republican Party's legacy for the last couple of generations. And now you have libertarian-minded candidates like Rand Paul out there saying, look, this is just too much. They see these militarized police forces and they say this is everything that should make a conservative nervous about an overreaching state. And of course, that's making a lot of people uneasy. Now, what Rand Paul has done that's really interesting that you haven't quite seen other Republicans do is tie this into civil rights. And what he said is, of course, African Americans are going to feel like they're attacked by society when you look at what's happened in Ferguson. And so whether or not Republicans can kind of make those connections and have black voters believe them that they're sincere, I think is an open question, but you're starting to hear them talk about it in a way that you haven't heard.
I wrote in Politico yesterday that it was nice for once to have a Republican express concerns about the property rights of African Americans as much as, let's say, a racist ranch owner in Nevada. It was, I think Rand Paul's column yesterday was a pretty important column, Caddy, and you actually have the president and Eric Holder and Rand Paul and Ted Cruz came out yesterday also expressing concern about what was going there. And a lot of people that are actually starting to come together on this.
Yeah, and the speed with which people have come together from both sides of the aisle has been noticeable. If you think about the Trayvon Martin case, and that took a little bit longer. Let's go Julie Pace up on Martha's Vineyard with the president. Julie, you were listening to what the president was saying yesterday and calling for peace, but clearly in the context of what he was saying, also him too pointing a large degree of responsibility and putting it on the shoulders of the police in Ferguson.
Yeah, if you listen to the president's statement, for a while he was trying to talk to both sides of this. He said it's obviously out of bounds for there to be looting, violence against police, but his most pointed comments were directed at the police themselves, basically saying there is no excuse for excessive force. He did have to be careful. There's a lot we don't know about Michael Brown's death, but what we do know about the fallout seems to be pretty clear, that there are police officers that were using excessive force. And when you talk to White House officials, they say that for a couple couple of days this week, the president wanted to see if the local and state police that were involved in this situation could manage it themselves. It became clear to him late Wednesday night that that was impossible, and there was a real need on the White House's part to step in some way, even if it's just with a presidential statement, but to basically put their stamp on this matter and say that this has just gone too far.
It really was, Willie. I mean, again, Mike, we were looking at these still photos. Oh. It's insanity.
Can we get one of those back up? The one where he's on top of the...
It does look like Baghdad.
It looks like Baghdad. I read somewhere yesterday, and maybe Jeremy, you know more about this than me, but a lot of this came out of Homeland Security, and where excess Pentagon supplies go to local police departments. I gotta say, if somebody's in my neighborhood with that, I would walk up to them and say, well, I can't say it on TV, but it would get the whatever out of my neighborhood now.
Well, I think one of the open questions here that you're going to...
Go ahead.
One thing I wonder that if you'll see after Ferguson is a push in state legislatures, city councils, maybe even in Congress, although I doubt it, to limit what these police departments are able to purchase. I think there's going to be a backlash. The question is how it's dealt with in a legal matter.
But wow. In addition to that, Jeremy, I mean, the key here to these shots that we're showing, the still photo that we just showed, this is, if you would take a police manual, Reverend, in terms of how not to train a police department, you would be showing these as Exhibit A, how not to train it. They are aiming at the crowd. Yep. Aiming at the crowd. Nothing is going on other than a demonstration, and they are aiming at the crowd.
The sniper was aiming right at a non-violent protest, and I think that those are the things that are frightening and only further agitate this kind of hostility. And again, it only is exacerbating real feelings about a guy that was killed for, as far as we know, for being told to get out the street. I mean, Rand Paul is right, and this is all we were saying since last weekend. What did he do and why? And we still, I don't want that to get lost in all of the kumbayas that we're doing in Ferguson now.
You know, if you look at the video we had earlier with the police lines up there, you know what happened yesterday? Captain Ron Johnson, the new head of command of this, said there are no more police lines. The cops fall to the side. You can be there to protect and preserve the peace, make sure there's no looting, but people are going to walk peacefully, and that's exactly what they did. When they dropped those lines, when they put down their snipers' weapons, they walked. Again, going back to the beginning, the police had to come in and do something. There was looting, there was violence, but it just got way out of hand over the last few days.
All right, Julie Pace, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Jeremy, stay with us.
Thanks.
And still at the Morning Joe, we